welcome back to another episode of Different by Default. This is season 6. Thank you guys for tuning in. So today, well, before I even start the episode, I would like to thank everyone for subscribing, for turning post notifications on and helping us with the algorithm. We appreciate it a lot.
We appreciate all you do.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest with us today. We have Quay. Clap.
Yeah, we'll call him Quay, but he got a full government, but we just call him Quay.
So, first question I want to ask as we get into this episode, you work in the music business.
Yes.
So, how do you feel about today's rappers?
I mean, there's I feel like they're doing what they do. Like every generation of hip hop has evolved from one state to another. And in that evolution, you have different generations of different types of rapping and different types of, different styles, different directions. And, I think it's all good when you look at it from that perspective. Now, me being from in the original era of hip hop, I have a personal preference in what I like and what I don't like, but I still appreciate creativity and people expressing themselves in the way that they see, best for them. And clearly there's audiences out there that are appreciating what this generation is doing musically. So, I mean, I don't really take a position on it, especially now being more of a businessman about it. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to have a personal opinion when you're an entrepreneur or when, when you work in the business, because we have a responsibility, to the industry and to the business itself. And a lot of times that doesn't necessarily coincide with what I might creatively like or don't like.
Mm-hmm. I have a follow-up question, though. Do you think that it's harder to get noticed, considering the things that you have to do now, like making TikToks and the whole maybe exposure?
Algorithm.
I would say...
Do you think that's way harder?
I don't think that it's harder. I think it's just different. Because... So here's the thing. To be a superstar artist, you have to have both, right? So in the beginning, it was about the music because there wasn't much visual, right? Videos didn't exist, and then music videos came and visuals gradually became important. But the music was the prevalent part. So the first thing you had to do is have music that the consumer liked. And once they liked it, then they said, okay, I like this music. I want to get to know this artist more. Now, because social media and the internet has become so prevalent in lifestyle and culture today, it's reversed. They have to see something that they like about you before they give your music a chance. But in the end, you end up in the same destination, right? So it's kind of like a circle. You're going one path, which was the old path. And this new path is going this way, but they both end up with the same destination. Because in order for a fan to really be a fan, they have to like you conceptually and visually, but they also have to appreciate you musically.
It's unfair.
I don't know if it's unfair. I just think that...
Because then you don't need talent anymore.
I wouldn't say that either, because you have people with no talent that come and go.
Oh, yeah.
And then the people that truly do have talent have staying power. I just think that it's oversaturated now because of the fact that anybody can put and submit music to the marketplace. Whereas in the older days, you had to go through a record company to submit your music to the marketplace and the consumer. So it was a lot more controlled. But even back then, you had one-hit wonders, or you had records where artists may not have had much talent, but for whatever reason, the consumer liked the record, and it lasted for a few seconds. But once that record died, that artist died with it.
I got 2 questions, but my first question is, because I saw this on, I think it was on TikTok, do you feel like record labels have been doing a dishonest job for their artists and not trying to promote them as well as they possibly can be? Because some people feel like there's certain artists that can be on those certain levels, but their record labels aren't doing that good of a job.
No, and I'll tell you why. Because they don't understand how the system works. The system works like any sales business, right? I don't care if it's Best Buy, I don't care if it's Walmart. Record company works in the same fashion. So every single artist they sign gets pretty much the same amount of promotions and marketing in the beginning. And they have an expectation of what that's going to produce, let's say in 90 days or 6 months. Now, if the artist or the music doesn't reach that threshold within those 3 to 6 months, the label's now like, well, it didn't reach the threshold, we're going to put our attention somewhere else, because it's a revolving door of artists coming in. It's like an assembly line, you know. So it isn't that the label prefers this over that. They don't. They're in the business of selling records. They don't care what record. You could say Mary Had a Little Lamb on a record, and if the consumer's reacting to it, they're going to push Mary Had a Little Lamb. What happens is when they don't see the response that they expected to see, they don't have the time to devote more attention to try to get it to where it needs to be. So they start to turn their attention toward the next artist in line. Mm-hmm. And now it's incumbent upon the artist and the manager to see beyond what the record company, you know, had experienced with it not reaching that threshold and do something on their part to kind of change the trajectory of where their career is going in terms of the support that they're getting from the label.
My other question was, I believe you're a manager, right, for artists. What does like your day look like or a week look like managing artists? Like, how is that for you?
I'm actually getting out of management now.
Okay.
I have a record company, and I'm focused more on the label these days. But,
okay.
You know, being a manager is a lot of work because you have to be a lot of things to an artist. You're their therapist. You're their big brother. You're their guide. You're their, you know, you're the voice in their ear. You know, you're pretty much everything. You're their babysitter. You know, you have to do all of those things because you take care of the day-to-day functionality of that artist, and you assist them in the journey to becoming a star. Because there's a difference. You know, you can have a lot of artists and only one star. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, which is the path to finding success.
Mm-hmm. Since you're moving over to record label, like, so being on a record label, now you're more so picking out your talent, I would say, to choose, or
no, it's the nature of the relationship is different. A manager manages the operation of the artist. His responsibility is to communicate the artist's opinions and desires and wants and needs to the record company, and in turn communicate what the record label's expectations are to the artist so that the relationship functions healthy. He's also, you know, the manager is also responsible for all of the other aspects of the artist's career in terms of shows, in terms of merch, in terms of everything. He assists him in making sure that those things all run, you know, in a favorable fashion. The record company's sole responsibility is to take the music and the likeness of the artist and expose it to the consumer, and thereby making money off of it. So they finance a lot of what the artist is doing. And the expectation is that investment will come back to them through the sales.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I got a question. Me personally, my preference for like good music is like the story that it tells with their song. Like, you know, G Herbo's a good storyteller when he.
When he was on.
But he was on. But in your opinion, like, which one of these, like, rappers, musicians, like, who is the best storyteller in your opinion?
I mean, I'd have to say Drake right now.
Drake?
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, the numbers don't lie. As much as you can manipulate certain numbers, you can only manipulate the numbers to an extent, right? But at some point, the integrity of the music has to stand on its own. And at the end of the day, no one's having more success than Drake.
Are those numbers fake?
No.
Are numbers ever fake with an artist?
Yes.
How often?
I think every artist has some degree of what we would consider fake spins, but there's a strategy to it. It's not that, when it's done the right way. Mm-hmm. You have artists that all of their numbers are fake, but they fade because you'll know. Like, I'll give you an example. There's an artist, I'm not going to say the artist's name, but he had over 100 million streams on a song, but he couldn't book a show.
That's what I'm saying. How do you have these numbers and then you can't get a show or have enough
Because
people
the numbers weren't real. That's how you know they're not real. Like, it's not hard to tell. If you got 150 million streams on a song, there has to be somewhere, some group of people somewhere that wants to see you perform. Mm-hmm. And when a promoter goes out to their community and they ask about you and no one knows you, you have to accept at some point we have to start to question the validity of the streams that we're looking at, because no one wants to book you. No one knows who you are. Mm-hmm. How is it possible that you have 150 million streams and no one knows you? Mm-hmm. You know, so the reality is just that the numbers really, when you get to a certain point, the numbers don't lie. So going back to what I was about to say is that sometimes it's all about manipulating the algorithm, right? So you may have a song where if you put extra streams on it to reach a certain amount of streams within a given period of time, the algorithm will pay attention to that, and it will now give you more activity on Google search engine. So sometimes record labels will do things like that. Also because you want to kind of manipulate the consumer a little bit, because if I say, hey, I got this record's a hit, and the consumer themselves will go and see that there's real streams on the record, they want to know why this record is streaming. So that piques their curiosity and makes them want to go pay attention to the record as well. However, even in that instance, once they go to the record, they either like it or they don't like it. They're either going to stay or they're going to leave. So there's going to come a point where there's going to be where the fake streams will end and the real streams will begin. So you can't really have all fake streams and have real success or longevity in this business. You can have some combination of both, but the majority of your streams have to be real. The only way you know if you have real fans is if they exercise their purchasing power.
So in the beginning, like, let's say like the first 2 years of somebody's music career, right? Would you say that usually they're fake?
No, I can't say that. It just depends. I think there's always a combination of both.
Or once they decide to, or if somebody signs them, are they more likely to have fake numbers in the beginning?
Again, you can't say that. It's not realistic to say any definitive. They're all fake or they're all real. I'm sure that every single artist has some combination of both, to some degree.
Do you know if there's an app where I can get some fake streams?
That's crazy.
It's like, no, but like, for real.
I mean, I can introduce you to somebody that probably knows, but I that's not my thing. So I really don't. But I surround myself with people that know the things that I don't know, so that we can have success as a team.
Fair.
That's true. In the conversations we've had outside of this podcast, I see you as someone that really knows their music. So a question would be, who do you think is an underrated artist, can be from any time, that people should really go and listen to?
Wow. Man, that's a tough question.
Did my job. Did my job.
Who do I think is underrated?
Can be any time, because you know a lot of
That's
music.
why I'm
Jesse.
saying it's a tough question. I've been doing this a very long time, probably longer than all of you have been alive. So, yeah, let me think about that for a second. Just give me. I mean, there's so many artists that there was stuff that I came across over the years that I thought. I mean, it's just hard now to go back and
You can pick one from each genre.
I think, like R&B wise, I felt like Jasmine Sullivan should have got way more attention than she did. But she did have moments, so that's why I don't know if she's a right answer.
Okay.
I think she's a little underrated, though. I think she's a really spectacular artist. And I think that she gets a little bit lost in the R&B conversations because she's more traditional R&B. I think Big Sean is a little underrated. I think Big Sean should he should be considered in the elites of this generation from a lyrical perspective. And even though he does have success and he does very well, I think he should be in the top, considered in that top 3 of Drake, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. I think he should be there in that top conversation. And I mean, going back, geez, man, there were so many dope artists singing. That one is tough to go back. I would need more time to really say that because I have so many songs. I have millions of records in my head. So
I'll give you a little spin-off questions. You say you have many records in your head. What is your best verse that you've ever heard an MC drop?
That's a good question.
That's another tough question because I've heard a lot.
People.
I mean, I've heard great verses from so many artists that I thought were spectacular verses. Nas has had a verse that I thought was amazing. Jay-Z has had verses that I thought was amazing. Raekwon the Chef had verses that I thought were amazing. I mean, there's so many.
I mean, the names themselves are kind of giving off. Yeah, that was probably fire. Like,
yeah, there was so many dope artists, man. That's a tough question because there was a lot. You know, man, Biggie, Tupac. You know who I thought there was an artist. They had some popularity in the '90s. Is Super Lover C and Casanova Rudd. They only had 2 big records, but they were really dope. And Super Lover C was a dope lyricist. And sometimes I don't think he gets credit, and because he's never in the conversation. Because I think people go about these things wrong when they talk about best rappers. They don't. I think when you have the conversation about the best rapper, it should just be about lyrics, not about how many records you sold. But a lot of times when you look at these lists at Billboard or whatever, it's always the top artists are the ones who sold the most records, not necessarily the ones who were the best lyricists. You know, I still think the 2 best lyricists in the history of rap music are Big Daddy Kane and Rakim, with Kool G Rap like an alternate. You know what I'm saying? And KRS-One. I think that's your Mount Rushmore of MCs. You know, but you know, nowadays it's always Eminem, Biggie, and Pac that they're always putting as the top 3 rappers. You know,
I think ODB's up there too.
that's what I'm saying. There's so many MCs that were really dope, but if you look at that and try to come up with a list based on lyrics alone, it's difficult because there were a lot of dope rappers. Andre 3000's a dope rapper. Ludacris was a dope rapper. T.I. was a dope rapper. There's a lot of guys who were dope rappers in their own right that don't get the attention. Like there's a Chubb Rock. You probably don't even know who Chubb Rock is. Chubb Rock was a super dope lyricist that people sometimes forget about because his songs weren't that big. You know what I'm saying? Him and Special Ed all came out of the hit him and Howie T's camp. But Chubb Rock was a dope lyricist, you know? And he just doesn't get that attention like he should. Black Thought from The Roots is a dope lyricist. Yeah, I mean, you know, when you see hip-hop wasn't really a music thing. It was a cultural lifestyle thing that once it became about making music and selling that music to the consumer, it changed a little bit. And it has to change because, you know, me just expressing myself lyrically is one thing, you know, but making songs that people want to listen to over and over again is something entirely different. So just by virtue of that and by virtue of the fact that you start making money from putting this music out, it's going to change the landscape. It also changes a rapper's ability to rap and what he raps about. So Jay-Z in Reasonable Doubt is not Jay-Z of today because Jay-Z's not poor anymore, or he's not in the street trying to hustle and sell drugs to make a couple dollars to survive, to do these things. So the pain and the struggle that's in Reasonable Doubt, he can't possibly express that anymore. Because he's rich. So he can only write about where he's at right now. Otherwise, it almost feels fake. He can always allude to what he used to do and say, I was this guy. Like he'll say things like, I was a corner boy who's in a corner office now, right? He can do those things because that's his reality. But he can't say, I'm on the block, you know, selling rocks, doing this. He can't say that anymore because that's not what you're doing. And we all know you're not. You're a billionaire. You see what I'm saying? So, and music has to be about what I really feel. There has to be authenticity in what I say as an artist. Even if I'm telling somebody else's story, I'm telling that story with a sense of my own authenticity involved in it.
So wait, a slight question. Do you feel like a lot of the artists now are telling fake stories? Because a lot of
I can't say they're fake stories.
No,
Rappers
they are.
have always been storytellers. I don't listen. 99% of the rappers that ever came out were not telling their own story. So the idea of saying they're telling fake stories today doesn't make sense. If they were never telling their own story, they were always telling stories of their homeboys on the block or their friends. There were a couple rappers who
actually lived that life.
who actually lived the life and talked about what they lived, but for the most part, they're telling somebody else's story. Or they're telling stories of just things they've seen in their neighborhood. Like hip hop's first real political record was The Message by Grandmaster Melly Mel and the Furious Five, right? And Melly Mel is telling the conditions of the Bronx, New York in the 80s. Is it necessarily something he went through? Yeah, because he lived there and he grew up there. But the point wasn't to him to tell his actual life. He's telling the story of what everyone, including him, was going through in that time and trying to get that message across that, hip hop was spawned out of that. The idea that we're being forgotten about and we don't have a voice in the world, and people need to know what we're going through in our city in these conditions. So music gave them an opportunity to speak that voice. And again, today it's a little different because everyone's more focused on the money and the success than they are about the message.
My next question to you is, wow. So there's like many producers. Which producer do you think defined the era when it comes to like music?
Defined which era?
Any era, like each.
Let's do 90s and 2000s.
Again,
Let's say 90s and 2000s.
it's hard to say because every era had multiple producers that defined that era.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's plenty of dope producers today. Metro Boomin, ATL Jacob. I mean,
That's now,
Southside. And you go into the 2000s. You think about D. Angela. You think about Just Blaze. There were just so many dope producers in every era. It's hard to pinpoint like which one producer. The one person you could say maybe had a real like impact that kind of took over by himself was Dr. Dre, because he was.
What about Jermaine Dupri? I love Jermaine.
No.
Yeah.
I was gonna get there.
Okay.
But I'm saying in the era of Death Row and NWA, it was Dre. When the So Def era was big, it was Jermaine Dupri, Brian Michael Cox, and everybody that was a part of their camp. But Jermaine Dupri was the visionary, So there's always been these standouts. Even when the Bad Boy era, nobody could front that Puff ran the world creatively, and he may not have been the actual producer, but he assembled the best producers he could find with the Hitmen, and he guided them into giving him the best records that took over and governed an era. And then Death Row came and Dre did basically the same thing on the West Coast. So you had these two juggernauts musically that were doing things. The reason why I say Dre more is because Puff had a team of producers that were from, you had, who was there? Chucky Thompson, Stevie J. There were just so many dope producers in the Hitmen. But Dre was basically Dre. And he did have some staff producers under him like Scott Storch and a few others that were under him, but it was Dre, and Puff was not necessarily a physical producer, but more of a visionary, So
I was gonna say Dr. Dre too.
I like Jermaine Dupri.
No, but Jermaine Dupri did make a bunch of great records, but him and Puff are similar. Like Jermaine produced and Jermaine did write. I don't know what percentage of all of those great records did he write and produce. Puff didn't write anything, but he had the ear. He had an ear like nobody else.
He's on a lot of records.
But Dre was, a good portion of all of the stuff he did was orchestrated by him. He was more like a Quincy Jones in the rap version. Because Quincy would call instrument players from all over the world or wherever, but he was the visionary that guided how the song would turn out, and he had a vision in his mind about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little side question off of that. Do you think that today's artists capture the same energy as people back in the 90s or 2000s?
No. How could they? Everything's different. It's about making money now, so it's become more microwavable because, like I said, in the 90s, even though they were making a lot of money back then, we were still just coming out of the era where it was all about what we felt and what it meant to us. Now it's really just all corporate. Most of these kids are coming in and they're getting into music business solely because they want to be rich. They want to fuck bitches. They want to, wear big jewelry. They want to drive nice cars. And that's the driving force. So that passion is different than the passion in the past where, yeah, they wanted those things too, but they were more focused on making people feel what they were saying and experience what they were experiencing.
So like the communal aspect of music is like slowly dying away.
I don't know if it's dying, it's just changing. I mean, it can't die. If it dies, music dies. So I'm not going to say that it's dying, but it's the way it was is dying because they're on something new now. You know, kids aren't standing on the corner in ciphers rapping no more. That's over with because there's no need to do that anymore. The internet exists. You know, they would never have, verses.
There's not that many freestyles. Not a lot
That's
of
why I'm
people
saying
do
the
it.
talent is like slightly gone because the talent that you gain from rapping on the corner in a random cipher with your friends in your neighborhood, that's not a thing. Like you don't need skill. That's
Listen,
why.
I can agree with that, but you do still need skill because you have to write something witty,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You still have to write something. Now, freestyling,
But off the fly, come
but
on.
freestyling may be a skill set that's that's sort of a lost art, or not a lost art, because there's a lot of freestyle communities that are in the underground that still are healthy. They're just not mainstream, but it's still there. So it's just that it really all boils down to the consumer, and that's the part that the consumer doesn't want to accept. Everybody comes up with all these things about the conspiracy of the music industry. It's a conspiracy, and I'll tell you why. Because a record company, again, record companies are impartial to the creative progression of music. What I mean by that in layman's terms is that they're not in the business of making records. They're in the business of selling records. Artists and producers are in the business of making records so that record companies can sell it. So if I'm in the business of selling records, I could care less what you're talking about. As long as they want it, I'm going to give it to them. Without morals, without conscience, none of those things are mitigating factors. The only mitigating factor is the consumer reacting to it? And if they are, I'm going to dump that on them. And I'm going to find 14 other variations of that so I can continue to make money. Right? So that's where you kind of lose what we're looking for in terms of diversity and creativity in music. If the consumer wanted diversity, there'd be diversity. If the consumers wanted true lyricism, there would be true lyricism. But what happens is the consumer says they want these things, but they don't prove it by exercising their purchasing power.
Yeah, they find it boring. So
They don't stream it.
so no.
You can't tell me I want rap music to not disrespect women. I want rap music to not do this. I want rap music to not do that. And then when they put out music that doesn't do that, you don't support it. So at the end of the day, you're being hypocritical in your position as a consumer. The record company could care less what you think. They're only going to go by what you do.
That's real.
So my last question to wrap up the show, this is for everyone too. If you can listen to one album for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I mean, there's a few of those.
Miseducation.
Michael Jackson's Thriller,
Oh yeah, I forgot about.
Prince Purple Rain.
Me, probably have to be between Victory Lap or Enter the Wu-Tang 36.
Into the
Chambers.
Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, of course. Nas, every Nas album to me personally, And 90% of Jay-Z's albums I can listen to all day.
Jay-Z, my boy.
I could even go back and listen to Run DMC's albums, back to back and just enjoy it. Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Even Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet, like all those albums were just classic albums that you could just listen to from front to back.
And not get tired.
Not get tired. I mean, I could listen to NWA's first album. And that's just off the top of my head. I mean, there's like so many Ghetto Boys.
Oh, shit.
Even like Too Short. And I wasn't a super Too Short fan because I was so New Yorked out about lyricism. I didn't really appreciate him in the beginning the way I do now. In that what he was spitting was real shit. And you got to respect that. Maybe he's not as lyrical as a Big Daddy Kane or a Rakim, but in what he did and what he represented was really dope. There's just so many dope albums that were made. I mean, not just that. Cuban Links, Raekwon, Iron Man, Ghostface.
Yeah.
So, There's a lot.
I did like your answer too with miseducation of L'Oreal.
Oh,
But
yeah.
We gotta wrap this up now. There goes the buzzer, y'all.
well,
Keep
thank you
going
guys
on.
for tuning in to another episode of DVD. We just keep asking you guys to subscribe, keep turning on post notifications. It helps us out a lot with the algorithm.
Yes, it does.
And until next time, you know.
See, there's that damn algorithm again. God damn it.
Until next time, stay different by default. DVD. You know.